Hello, folks. Welcome to the Exploring Tools and Features for Efficient IT Operations inside N-sight RMM. Starting off with who am I? My name's Joe Furla. I've been here at Enable for about 6 years now. I started work as a channel sales representative back in the SolarWinds days. I was one of the first employees hired after the Logic Now acquisition in channel sales. From there, I moved to sales engineer as I found to sell a piece of IT. I had to know everything I could about that piece of IT, and that fit quite nicely with that role. From there, I was asked to be one of the original 6 partner success management folks in the implementation and creation of that team, and I sat in that role for about 3 years. Which was definitely a very fun one. And as of May of last year, Marc-Andre asked that I join the head nerd team as kind of the do everything head nerd. My primary focuses, of course, are operational efficiency, N-sight, Mac, and some of our satellite tools like MailAssure, Take Control, MSP Manager, and the like. But today we're here for N-sight. What are we doing with this boot camp? Who is it for? All right, so first things first, this boot camp is going to be designed to be a little bit more of an introductory boot camp, but this is something I think we can use for everyone, right? So while we're designing this to be a little bit more of a introductory item, those of us who have been inside the RMM for a good while will go over a lot of the tools that we are using on a day-to-day basis in our tech support role. And specifically what this is designed for. What is direct support? When do we use the tools within the RMM? And how can we get better at using those particular tools? So we're going to take about an hour and a half today, and we're going to pretty much go holistically through the entire dashboard, looking at this from a tech support representative's view, be it a tier 1 or a tier 3. Right? Unfortunately, I don't have the time nor the bandwidth to do a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 engineer style boot camp with this, where I have 4 in a series. So we're going to look at this pretty holistically. We'll start out with, again, a general overview of what is direct support. We'll take a look at a couple scenarios where we're going to utilize tools in the dashboard. Right? Then we will go through the dashboard itself, the tools and the features a little bit more in depth as we go. And I know the agenda here looks pretty jam-packed, but starting off the bat, direct support, what is it and when do we provide it? Well, starting off quite easily, direct support is any support that's going to be offered by an MSP where the end user is unable to see any of the work being done by the technician assigned to the task or case. Okay, this includes use of items like take control or remote background primarily, as well as self-healing inside the N-sight RMM automation side of things. Okay, so when we look at this, what we are looking for is non-disruptive Mac or Windows support that is primarily using tools built into the RMM to be as non-disruptive as possible. Now, we can expand that out a little bit to include some remote support. Okay, and we'll go over that as well, because in our IT support, we're going to be looking at this from a holistic view. But what we want to be thinking about when we're going through this webinar and when we're going through these tools is, as MSPs, we sell productivity and peace of mind. Okay, we don't really sell IT or we don't really sell software or anything like that, right? What we are doing is we're selling uptime and security as a service or as services. So when we look at this talk path, we focus a little bit more on direct support being our primary avenue of support for our end users because it's stuff that's happening in the background. We should want to do things through automation and remote background through scripts and the like first, and then use take control when we have to, right? It should be not maybe our last item, but or our last tool to use, but a tool that's still in our tool belt. So when do we provide this, right? We use it to simply and easily run scripts on demand or through self-healing, right? Or proactively. Okay, we look at service and daemon management on our Windows and Mac devices. We look at process control, application control. We look at things like printer issues and the like, right? These simple, easy to deal with items that we're going to look at churning through on a day-to-day basis. Taking a look at 3 quick demo instances. All right, first things first, we'll quickly take a look at printer issues. Okay, probably one of the most common things that we're going to be looking at dealing with inside the RMM or inside our day-to-day, because let's be honest, everybody has printer issues, right? Well, I say one of the most common, right? Probably the most common is resetting passwords. Okay, but we have a couple of options that we can look at using here tool-wise. We could use our checks to automatically restart our services as stopped and look at alerting based off of consecutive restarts, as well as a number of restarts in X number of hours to fail our check. Once our check has failed, we can use the automation manager to create a script that would look at 1, checking to see if the print spooler service is running. If it's not, check against another service that should be running, say Windows Time. If that's running, try and restart the print spooler. Check print spooler again. If it doesn't work, we can look at automatically trying to perform any type of remediation on that particular service as necessary, right? Or maybe even going so far as to look at reinstalling drivers based off of automation, right? Which can very easily be added in our task section where we come to automated tasks, and we can look at adding some of our proactive maintenance here. And it looks like I don't have my print spooler one in here, so we'll go to settings, script manager, new, and we'll browse for the item, right? So when we come in and just showing you how quickly automation can be added here, we'll look at our RMM automation, day 1 and 2, and we'll look at some proactive maintenance amps. So I'll run this as an automated task for my Windows devices. This is print spooler fix. I can add a brief description as I need. Hit save, close out, and we'll come back to our automated task. So let's get back into our print spooler fix. And what we'll be doing here is looking at running this based off of check failure. And we'll use a Windows service check, come down, find our print spooler, next, finish. And now we've created our self-healing, right? Direct support that's automated throughout the dashboard, quickly and easily as we're looking through. Okay, if this doesn't work for us, we can come to our device and look at remote background. So coming in, remote background is going to be a remote command line or PowerShell tool where we can look at performing tasks without the end user knowing we're there, either via PowerShell or via command line. So quite quickly, I can switch over to PowerShell, right? And we'll be able to run forward. And unfortunately, my VM is not liking this at the present moment. But suffice to say, we also have some additional items here where we can come to system info, where maybe we don't know what we need to be using command-wise or scripting-wise. We can actually affect change on, say, our print spooler with a simple right click. Start, stop, restart if necessary, create a service check if we need, and set startup type. Quick, easy items to look at dealing with our printer issues. Okay, quick question coming in. What's the difference between standard background and advanced background for our older or more seasoned viewers, standard's going to be the traditional view that we used to see during the SolarWinds days. Okay, it's a little bit truncated of a tool. Okay, it's just not quite there. It works on the old take control engine. It's there for our antiquated devices that still have TeamViewer as a take control instance inside the RMM if you're an older user. Okay, and I typically don't recommend using the standard, even if TeamViewer is an option. Okay, the advanced remote background is going to be what we see here. Okay, where we have more access to things like remote registry, we have more access to items like file transfer, we have more access to items inside our actual command line or PowerShell item. Though again, my VM's being finicky today. Okay, we also get a little bit easier to deal with options in the top right-hand corner. Okay, and it's just a newer, more powerful tool based on the more modern take control engine. Okay, if you guys remember, I believe it was like 2019, and when we updated the take control engine inside the RMM, that's what's introduced advanced remote background. So that should be your default as necessary, right? Remember, when I say antiquated machines, I don't just mean machines that have TeamViewer on them. I mean machines that are dealing with depreciated support from Enable and from Microsoft. Okay, so you are forced to use TeamViewer because Take Control doesn't actually support the OS in any meaningful fashion, right? So we're talking, well, maybe not XP and Vista anymore, because I think those can only be managed as network devices, but we're going back to our 7s, we're going back to our 8s, those really old devices. All right. Second item, that we can take a look at here for troubleshooting for our devices, right? Looking at how are we going to be dealing with our issues that are commonly seen when our end users don't want to know we're there. So again, attacking remote background, right? We saw that we can control processes. We saw that we can control what services are running. We saw that we can control the registry as well as simple basic items, again, coming in real quick, of maybe what's installed, right? What is on that device? What do we need to get our hands on inside the tool itself to perform the work that we need? So when we look inside the RMM, some of the most common items that we see failing, okay, are going to be our performance monitoring checks. So we see here, right, we have the ability to look at any of our applications, okay, pull a couple other, right, bits of information here, such as size and the like, right? We can also export, but more importantly, look, we're interacting with our services, our processes, our drivers, and the like. We're interacting with items that are on startup. So when we look at our performance monitoring checks failing, we can quickly come to the more information section, view our 24-hour or 8-day reports as necessary, okay? Come in and start to make determinations of, okay, I need to go into my application log, nicely enough, check within the RMM for specific event log items, okay? And I can pull my reports, what's running, what's happening, what's hung, right? And I can start to use remote background in conjunction with this check to say, okay, these processes are hung, these applications are having issues. I can now dial down to individual points in time over a week or 24-hour period to determine how I can best look at managing my devices. Better performance, faster endpoints, happier end users, okay? And I can affect this change without ever having to pull items from the device itself or take control of the device to perform any remediation, okay? So again, some really quick scenarios that we can look at inside our tool sets. So what are we going to find inside the RMM, and what are we going to hear me talking about today? All right, so first off, we're going to see a bunch of geography inside the RMM. We're going to see our toolbar, our panes, our left-hand column, and our support and links section. Okay, so really quickly, as we go through the RMM, as we're going through our meeting, you're going to hear me talk about the west pane, which is where we house our clients and sites, our north pane, which is our individual devices based on the filtering selected inside the west pane. So here I can filter to just company one. I can drill down to individual sites as I need. Okay, and my north pane will reflect that filtering. Inside the north pane, I'm going to see the generalized health of my individual devices. Quick refresh for all of us, right? We see our features that are turned on. We see our checks and our tasks. We also see some pertinent information, like is the device in maintenance mode? For those of us that aren't familiar, maintenance mode does not prevent the functionality of anything inside the dashboard. It just suppresses alerts for the designated time period. We have our reboot denotation. If for any reason the device needs a reboot based off of an action taken inside the RMM, installation of EDR, uninstalling managed antivirus Bitdefender, running a patch that will require a reboot, we'll see it here. Nice little blue button. What we'll also see is from the north pane, all of our granular information about the selected device is going to be shown inside the south pane. Okay, everything from a basic summary of the device itself, which will also give you a nice big yellow warning box if a reboot is necessary, to your checks and tasks, health of device, automated actions being taken, to any premium feature, patch, or asset information that you may need. Premium features inside the RMM as a good little verbiage item or nomenclature item are going to be anything that we find in the toolbar settings underneath patch management. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So moving to our top toolbar, file, edit, view are going to be items that we'll touch mostly for nicety purposes. I've found that for most of the time that anything that's done in the file section, I will more than likely do with a double click in the north pane, with a right click in the north pane, or with a add check in the south pane to individual devices. Global additions of checks tend to be added by monitoring templates, which are controlled by a right click. Okay, so maybe not items that we're going to sit in too much, but are here. Okay, inside view, most of these items can be reached here quite quickly using our little left-hand column, okay, with our little symbols. And we'll live here in the toolbar most often in the reports in the settings section. Okay, reports pulling pertinent information, settings controlling the features and functionality of the solutions that you've turned off or on. So quite quickly, I mentioned earlier, patch management and up here included in the cost of an agent. Managed antivirus and down, these are our premium features. So managed antivirus, web protection, backup, and risk intelligence. Device management for Apple is not an additional cost like those other four, but it does require some additional setup and usage, okay, which we're not going to go over too much today, but we'll hit a little bit. Outside of that, for our IT support folks, the agent section will be quite nicely hit as we can update our agents as well as deploy agents from this particular section. The remote access item will allow you to download the appropriate viewers as necessary. Backup recovery and will allow us to download any recovery tools, but not quite what we're going to be looking at today. And external links, which is going to be or should be quite heavily used by our IT support folks, can house any link outside of the RMM that is pertinent to their day-to-day usage. So you'll see here, I have MSP Manager, EDR Backup, and Take Control Plus. What I would also have here would be any type of password management, knowledge base, OneDrive, anything where my technicians are going to be accessing any type of pertinent information to their day-to-day. Additionally, namely additional passwords, as well as any type of SOP or standard operating procedure. Gotcha. Quick question coming back to the agent section. When we're looking at deploying an agent remotely, that's when we're looking at deploying an agent remotely that's not on a domain, okay, what I would use for this is going to be the remote worker installer. The remote worker installer is going to pull us a nice, neat little zip file, okay, that we can look at dispersing in the means of we need, right? We can look at attaching this to a URL inside our dash or inside our website behind a paywall, maybe for each individual client, not too hard to host. We can email this to an end user, right? You can look at just dispersing that executable in any way you need. So if we download the zip, well, I thought I clicked download. Let's see if this pops up. For those of you who don't commonly attend boot camps, of course, GoToMeeting does not like the RMM. There we go. All right. Pulling the agent here inside the zip gives us our executable as necessary. Okay. Take it, push it as you would need. There's a couple other wrinkles in there that if you want to talk about later, we can, though very rarely are those wrinkles used. More importantly, what we would see is the remote worker can be created via API. So if we are quite handy with an API, you can actually create just a simple PowerShell script that you can run on those devices that will actually pull client and site via API to create the remote worker for and automatically install it. If you need help there, skipping to a little bit of our geography, we'll see our resource center. Inside our user guide, you can find the API. Okay. All right, last little item that we'll hit for geography is going to be this left-hand column. The left-hand column is going to include our additional dashboards as well as an additional link to device management for Apple. Our filters, okay, which are per user filters, and these will allow your technicians to create filters for day-to-day usage to determine where they need to be starting or looking at completing their day, right? So for instance, when I was an MSP, out in the real world, I was looking at my pertinent SOW-based items that need to be taken care of on a daily basis, and I set up a filter for each one, right? Patch management scan fails. My patch management scan is set to report only. So if it's failing as a check, it means that that scan did not run properly. I need to go do some research, okay? Managed antivirus check failed. Something was found. Sentinel-1 check failed, right? There's a problem there that needs to be addressed quite quickly. And filter as necessary. You could filter by device and their status, clients, any of the features that are turned on, checks and their status, as well as tasks. Hitting the nice little star button here will attach this to the filter section in the north pane for quick and easy usage. Asset tracking gives us insight quite detailed into our device's assets. Your engineers are going to use this more, your tier 3, your tier 2 technicians. Your tier 1 technicians aren't probably going to hit this too much unless they're looking at doing some type of mass uninstall. Okay, the asset tracking section is quite expansive, and the reporting out of there tends to be very bulky. So do be aware as we're coming in and looking at, say, a list of software, we're seeing everything for the selected company and sites, and you'll have the hyperlinks to be able to drill down to who has what individual piece of software installed. If we do pull any reports here, they're going to be XML and SQL data dumps. Please do get familiar with any type of SQL queries, or look at pushing this into Excel and get familiar with pivot tables. Luckily, our help goes through how to use those. And then on the left-hand column here, I think one of the more important things for our technicians as well as us as business owners is going to be the wall chart. Okay, 50-50 if you would like to use the wall chart or the active issues dashboard to do have the same function. I like the wall chart because you can open it up in a separate window, throw it up on a screen inside your tech pit, or just keep it on a separate screen as you are the single owner. And this gives you a nice list that refreshes on a 5-minute basis of items that are failing inside your dashboard, right? It's a nice little to-do list that points you where you need to be looking. Okay. And then we have, last but not least, integrated EDR if we're using it. Okay, so some nice quick geography inside the RMM. All right, this brings us to the basics of N-sight, right? The toolbar. What are we doing here as technicians, and what are we going to be sitting at as we're going through troubleshooting or providing service to our end users? Okay, we already talked about the agents and where they sit, as well as some of the additional tools for backup and recovery, external links, and the like. Okay, and all of this is going to be controlled inside our settings dropdown. So as technicians and dashboard management folks, we're going to be here quite often. Okay, this is going to come from the off and on of our features. We'll talk about that from a technician's point of view. User management, patch management, systray application management. Okay, so when we look at a quick demo here, inside the RMM as a technician, not an administrator, okay, I'm going to sit in a couple places. Okay, so first off, we will look at policies for security purposes, right? As a technician, making sure that my security settings are proper. First off, take control. Settings are going to control the off and on. The policy is going to control the features of that tool. And security focused, we actually have a security tab. So technicians should be aware that we need to make sure we are requesting end user permission for take control, not remote background. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, and we have a visual indicator up, especially if we are in the EU. Okay, I believe this is a GDPR requirement. If it's not, it should be, right? Because GDPR tends to be that granular, and we should be using these items. Okay, so permission with a timeout for unattended. Okay, allowing that remote control. Lock device when the session ends, and always show a visual indicator for just base security items. Additionally, focusing on our take control methods underneath settings, remote background, there's pretty much one setting we can use. It is, does it require a password upon start? Default, yes, it should. Okay, and it'll be the user password. Okay, we should be password protecting these items. We should be looking at end user permission for these items when appropriate, because we are looking more and more at environments that tend to be pretty heavy in regards to security, right? Small to medium businesses are prime targets in our cybersecurity attacks. Look, we make headlines when somebody like Equifax or Target or some type of municipality gets hit. Looking at Oregon DMV and the like, right? But what we should also note is that small to medium businesses that MSPs are supporting are primary vectors for attack. And your dashboard is actually a great vector. More security in the dashboard, easier time we are going to have, right? This also applies to things like managed antivirus and EDR, okay? So we'll take a quick look at our policies that our technicians need to be aware of inside EDR or inside managed antivirus as well as EDR. And those are going to be quite succinctly 3 things in managed antivirus. Active protection, is it enabled, and what are we scanning upon access? Do we need any exclusions here? Okay, are we looking at executables only? Are we going to customize our file extension, or are we going to scan all files when they open? It depends on your client. It depends on how heavy-handed they want to be. Behavioral scanning is another item that needs to be turned on for our Windows devices. No questions asked. This is Bitdefender's heuristic scanning method. Okay. And while they'll rarely sit here, they do need to be aware of this as technicians. More importantly, where we need to be sitting as technicians is going to be our exclusions, right? Technicians are the folks that are doing, on tiers 1 through 3, your troubleshooting and support. If managed antivirus for some reason decides that it does not like OneDrive, which it has quite commonly in the past, we need to know where to be able to put these exclusions as we're going through our support of our clients. Right? That way, instead of doing this on a one-off basis, machine by machine, we can look at merging tickets together and providing these in a simple method. You can come and add individual files, file extensions, or folders, okay? And we give you parameters to add these items quickly and easily. And while most of this should be done during setup, our technicians need to know where these sit. For EDR, it's a little bit more complicated. Underneath our policies section of our integration management, okay, we'll see instead of just exclusions, we have the ability to add exclusions and blacklist items. Now, there'll be a pre-populated list of global exclusions that are always going to be inside EDR, either by Sentinel-1's denotation or Enable's denotation, so that you work best with our agents. But when we look at adding new exclusions, we can either create from scratch using a file and folder path or SHA value. Okay, I tend to prefer SHA if appropriate. But we can also pull from an exclusions catalog, making this quite easy for our technicians, right? AutoCAD being a huge offender here, right? Who wants to sit down and list out all of these exclusions as a technician? We've got a library ready for us, okay? So affecting change on our policies that sit inside our security world, right? Allowing our technicians easier access and more effective access to make sure that our end users are running smoothly, okay? Excuse me. I lost my notes. There we go. All right. Next up, technicians or engineers on an almost daily basis. I say almost daily. Let's be honest, we're probably not going to be looking at dealing with patches on a daily basis, but we should be at least checking these on a weekly basis, okay? Especially with the RMM update, does this become a pertinent item, okay? Our management workflow is going to control a nice global view of patches denoted by status, okay, that can be filtered by client or site that we need to be aware of. Okay, are these patches critical? Have they not installed? What's going on? So if we look at filtering this by status, it looks like I've got one failed critical security update. Okay, that's not showing missing anywhere. It's showing installed on one device. So I need to pull and look where I need to install this item. If I need more information on the patch itself, click my link, I come to the CV, I can see why I need the patch, I can look at any updates that I may need before installing the patch, and come through any troubleshooting items that I may need for this particular KB. Quite nice additional information. Once we've selected the appropriate patch to interact with here, we can, within a couple simple clicks, look at taking the action we need to across the board. Now, this case, I didn't do my research to drill down to the machine where this patch has failed, but I'm going to run this anyway for everybody because we know there's only one failed patch somewhere, okay, or a couple failed patches. So again, security items. Our technicians need to be aware of what's going on here, okay? If we have no statuses, you'll note we show things that are impending, missing, installing, failed, and I believe that's it. We won't show all of the installed patches unless you come in and actually click installed. Okay, so nice little lists there. All right, also inside patch management, more and more, again, because of the update that we've needed, our tier 2 and tier 3 technicians are going, and our engineers are going to need to be aware of where we can control our approvals. So we come settings, patch management, feature policy, and we'll see our Microsoft approvals granularly broken out by classification from Microsoft, as well as a laundry list of third-party applications broken out by individual vendor. Okay. Allowing our technicians to quickly and easily make approvals and ignore or decline automations, so that again, our end users don't know that we're there, and it allows you to quickly and efficiently get the work done. Okay. If we're seeing issues with, say, a feature pack update, come in, quickly either set it to manual or ignore as necessary, and move forward as we can look at pushing those patches when they've been fixed by, say, Microsoft. And we'll see the same thing here for our third-party vendors. So places where as admins we sit a lot, but we need to start thinking about where our technicians are going to be sitting and why they're going to be doing this. Okay. For Chrome or Edge that often require the browser to be restarted, when we look at patching those, we've got a couple ways we can look at this. We can either look at running some type of weekly maintenance that's going to force a reboot of a device, or bi-weekly maintenance that's going to force a reboot of a device, just going very heavy-handed here, which we should be doing anyway. Okay. Or we can look at educating our end users to say, look, you've got to do this. You can also script it, okay, but not something I very commonly see. Typically, I see MSPs let it get wrapped up in a reboot, or the end users are handling it. Okay. Last item we're going to hit on for this settings section that our technicians are going to be handling is going to be our systray application. This is one of the few spots that I say admin very rarely is going to have the final say of what's going on here. This is going to boil down to our technicians. This is going to boil down to our engineers. The reason I say that is the systray app is designed for communication with our tech support team, where our end users are going to have close to single-click access to our team, right? And the reason I say I like our technicians and engineers to have a good amount of say in what we're putting here is we have the ability to say, put text here, excuse me, right? I can come in and I can put local file items. So I can start describing things that I need done, right? Reboot a device, kill a application, install applications, hyperlinks to my support portal, email to my support portal, email screenshots to my support portal, hyperlinks to any type of KB that our end users are going to need, right? And I can start putting these inside my systray app, right? I would not use the MSP manager item, okay? It's not my favorite. I like the email and email screenshot for communication with our support portals, personally, okay? But I can now give my end users a large amount of self-healing that they can do for basic items, right? Abort a reboot and those type deals directly through my systray app, okay? The less we see our technicians, the better, and our technicians are going to have a much better idea of what we need to put here. Do I need to have a script that gets deployed to every device to be run on demand to reset a password, right? For a specific, say, program, right? We can do that. I just put it in as a local file. We'll just have text that says reset password for X, right? So the systray app here being a primary retention and communication option that we need to be looking at taking care of for our end users. And our technicians will have, I think, a good amount of say as to what goes on here. Let's jump into the North Pane and some other some tools that we're going to see a little bit more granularly than we went over inside our kind of little geography view here. So what we're quickly going to go over is just some basic navigation of this pane. What can or can we not do inside there for our IT support folks? right? What do we have for remote access? What are we going to look at doing for, say, some additional troubleshooting and deployment options? And then we'll take a look at what we can do with a simple right click on a device. Okay, we'll delve into some of those options a little bit more granularly as we continue to go through the tool. All right, so hopping back into the RMM. Right, so navigation inside the north pane. We already saw two of the basics where we can filter based off of our company, and we can look at filtering based off of our filters, either the pre-built ones that we see here or the custom items that we build here in our left-hand column. Okay, we also get the nice ability to search, okay, as we're going through. Right, so if we need to find an individual workstation, we have the ability to do so. We also get quite granular with our search. So say, for instance, we need to look at finding devices based off of last logged in user. Please note, last logged in user, you have the ability to do so here as well. Right, so username associated with that particular device. Okay, so some quick and easy navigation. Now there's a couple other items that we need to be aware of here as we're going through the tool, and that's going to be our refresh buttons. Okay, quite commonly as technicians, we are going to be running tasks. We're going to be installing services and features through the RMM and the like. And one of the things that I think people tend to forget about is that the dashboard's going to refresh on your check frequency. Servers or workstations could be 5, 15, 30, 60, or 120 minutes, but we also have the ability to run things like tasks in real time, okay? Or our installations will update outside of the check frequency, okay? Giving us a delay of information, right? Let's be honest, it doesn't take 30 minutes to install Bitdefender, okay? But the dashboard will only report if our check frequency is 30 minutes on that 30-minute interval. So our refresh buttons. Refresh here, if we hit it in the west pane, cascades down to north pane to south pane. North pane cascades down to south pane, and south pane just refreshes our south pane. Okay, so we have some nice features here as we're looking at going through and performing day-to-day work. Now we'll talk a little bit more about that work when we hit the south pane. Hold on to the wake on LAN question that we've got in the chat. We'll get there. Okay. But inside the north pane, we've got some good items. Now, where we're going to primarily sit inside the north pane is going to be in one of two places for our day-to-day individual machine work. And that's going to be with a right click on a device, okay, where we can look at accessing the device as necessary, right? Take control, remote background, or chat. We also have our buttons for the selected device here. Okay. We have the ability to send reboot commands, either scheduling for now or later as necessary. Okay, these are forced reboots and users don't have an option. They'll get a warning. This is about to happen and it's going to go. Okay, about 5-minute delay. Okay, but more importantly, what we have here is going to be a set of tools from maintenance mode to backup and recovery that we're going to need to look at hitting. Okay, if we're using MOB or integrated COVID data protection, managed online backup, okay, we have the ability to run our backups if necessary. The device was offline, it didn't run the previous day, our backup check failed, we need to run it again. Okay, we have the ability to access restore items here with a single click. Especially for file and folder backup, this is a very nice, easy way to quickly come in and get directed to the proper portion of the backup manager for us to look at performing any type of restore action that we may need. Okay, I focus on file and folder because that's where our technicians are going to be sitting the vast majority of the time. But let's be honest, this will also allow our engineers as well as our tier 3 technicians start looking at doing things like, say, a system state restore or some type of VDR, okay, as necessary. Quite simple. Make your selection of what you'd like to restore. So in this particular case, let's come down to users, right? We'll come down to, say, our enable user. Let's go to our desktop, and I want to restore my Edge link, or I want to come in and restore my documents folder because it accidentally got deleted, right? We have the ability to do so and select the dates as necessary, even hitting our archive points as we need. And we'll talk a little bit more about the backup and recovery management console in a moment. Okay. Managed antivirus, we have the ability to initiate our scans, okay, as well as look at updating our definitions, detect any competing products that may be missed during onboarding, and snooze the antivirus if we're going to do something that may look a little bit malicious, right? Interacting with PST and OST files may be something that we see there, as Bitdefender notoriously doesn't quite like them so much. Backing up real quick to the restore section of the backup manager, yes, there is a search here, okay, that you can use to look for files or folders that may need to be restored, and you don't want to go through that entire C tree. You're more than welcome to search, and they will be found. Okay, so some nice simple options there. And of course, it's going to run at about the speed of molasses for me because I'm doing a demo. But reasonable tool. Do keep in mind when we are running the search is going to take a minute. It shouldn't take as long as it took for me, but it will take a minute because it's going to pull up every available version of that particular search based off of your version parameters, right? So if we're using Cove or if we're using Mob, the number of versions we keep, as well as the amount of space those historical versions can take up, will dictate our process. So it is a sneaky little way to also get around some of our retention periods, right? Because if we are keeping 3 versions and one of those versions is quote unquote out of the retention period, we'll default to the number of versions, but not something we quite commonly see needed. Okay. Web protection. Inside our right click here, we get the ability to refresh to pull more pertinent information if we're outside of our check frequency. Okay, and snooze if we need to look at going to websites that may be improperly classified and the like, right? I'm not telling you to snooze web protection because we want our end users going to some type of highly malicious site, but there are occasions when this may be needed. For instance, I worked with an MSP who managed a library that was directly off campus of a large university. That happened to be notorious for their sociology and psychology department. And that library's website got classified on the Bright Cloud database to a score of, I believe it was like 35, which is like so incredibly malicious, it's not even funny. And that was due to the fact that the psychology department was running projects on some pretty gruesome topics at that particular time in the semester, not limited to, but including things like serial killers and the like, large amounts of drug usage and that kind of deal. And we had to snooze web protection for a minute on the library because they couldn't access their own website. So interesting item there. We're also able to access patch management, where we can run our patch status scan if it fails. We also have the ability to look at installing patches if they are pending. Okay. So the right click here being quite a good item, especially when we're looking at pulling more information, running our checks, or looking at running individual tasks or adding them as necessary from this north pane. Okay, so the right click here being some very good options. Stepping back and going back to our take control, because we talked about remote background quite in depth, what we have feature and functionality wise there. Please note a lot of that is repeated for take control. Okay, so in the event that we are going to be taking over for our end users, either because they cannot perform a function or remote background's not sufficient, I'm looking at you, say, installing something like QuickBooks that requires manual intervention. We've got file transfer here. We don't have access to the registry and system settings like we did inside remote background, but let's be honest, we don't need these in take control. Right? We've got a couple other additional tools that we'll see inside here, including commands that we can send, such as like remote locking, as well as our show blank screen or block the end user from using their keyboard and mouse. We have a record feature, which is going to be our ring here, okay, for security purposes, especially when we get into tier 2 and tier 3, where things that they may be doing may seem malicious when we all know full well they're not, right? And some basic comfort items as well as settings, like where are we going to store these recordings as necessary? How are we going to configure our recording uploads if needed, right? So where are we putting them? Right? Where are we going to schedule them, enable bandwidth throttling, and the like. Okay, so just some nice items here inside take control that we may want to be aware of. Items here as well we may want to look at doing is session inactivity timeout. Okay, additional security measure that we don't typically see inside our settings. I can come here and say if a technician hasn't done anything in 15 minutes, we need to close this session, and I can save that as our default. So now anytime a session sits open for 15 minutes, it's going to automatically close itself. Okay. Items that need to be at least taken aware of. Okay. And we'll close out here. Inside the chat's what you would expect. All right, simple, easy peasy. Type and click send. You can't really go wrong with the chat. All right. Nothing too complicated with that particular item. All right, last but not least, we get in the north pane, we're going to get our network devices and our networks tab. Okay, network devices are going to function pretty much like our workstations and servers. Right click, we get our edit items, okay, such as alerts and adding our checks, as well as editing the device itself. Okay, inside the south pane, what we're really going to get is just our check outages and summary status, but that's all we really need because let's be honest, these are network devices. What we're really doing is SNMP checks. Okay, if we're doing anything automation wise to these network devices, it should be running from a server on site. We should not be doing this through that individual network device. We need more control over that. We need to be running it from a DC or from some type of server that's controlling our network. But one of the nice things we do have is the ability to SSH into our devices. So we do get remote control that our end users will not be aware of because, well, let's be honest, it's text-based SSH, right? To perform some nice troubleshooting on these devices. And then last but not least, we have the networks tab, right? Our technicians are going to access this reasonably rarely because more often than not, our technicians and engineers are going to, outside of onboarding, stay outside of the networks tab because it's just not quite the most usable item for day-to-day troubleshooting. But what we're going to see them use quite commonly here will be the connected devices deployment method. If we see a device that has a no in the agent column here, a simple right click will allow you to push the monitoring agent with the proper credentials or monitor the device in the event of network devices that aren't being monitored. New device comes online, end user asks to get that device monitored. We have the ability to look at pulling there and getting those devices into the RMM as quick as possible. We do have this repeated inside the unmonitored devices section, though I much prefer the connected devices section because it's giving me a snapshot at that point in time, whereas the unmonitored devices tends to be more for admin, as it's giving us a historical and more holistic view of everything that we've seen on that network. So just be aware of some differences there. Oops. All right. South pane and North pane working together, right? So we talked about the South pane being our information gathering system for our granular information on our devices, right? And it gives us the ability to look at our outages, basics of the device, assets on the device, okay? What it also gives us the ability to do is start managing our tickets if we have an integrated PSA. Okay, it gives us the ability to find more information through our checks and look at working with our tasks and additional information on our premium features. So when we look at this tool set inside the South pane, we come back to our workstations tab. Actually, let's go to our servers tab because I think I have this up. Yes, I do. We need to be aware that there's a couple things that are going to be repeated. Mostly what we're going to see here is our SMS and email alert columns. Okay, in the North pane, they're alert for everything that happens to this device. In the South pane, they are very granular with their alerting. Here are the individual checks and tasks that I need to be looking at alerting on, okay, or seeing recovery of. All right, simply click your boxes as necessary, save, and you're good to go. More importantly, though, where we see inside this checks pane actions that our technicians are going to be taking are our clear check items. Okay. So here, if I want to clear a check, I can come in, click save, choose my check clearing behavior, so that I can look at taking something that may seem to be a little bit of white noise right now, looking at you performance monitoring checks, and then looking at turning them into more useful information. So let's say I have my performance monitoring checks set to fail after 10 consecutive failures. So my server check frequency is 5 minutes. That means my checks will fail after 50 minutes of performance monitoring check failure. I go to the device, I see there's nothing really that concerns me too much. I'll set this cleared until the next time the check runs. Let's see if it fails in another 5 minutes. If it's not clearing up after that particular cycle's run, okay, I probably need to be doing some more work, right? Here with my net path check, right? I'm not talking to enable. Now, I forced this to happen because our VMs inside our private cloud are not the best at talking to the outside world, okay? But let's say, for instance, I had a NetPath probe set to go from my server to a cloud-based POS system, or to my CRM, or to one of my end user soft phones, right? I can go ahead, clear this check until the next time it runs or passes appropriately, so that I can determine that, hey, this is a true outage that I need to be going on now, right? Or, okay, there was a little blip in the system. Let's schedule some further research when my tier 3 technicians or my end user has time, right? We'll come in, set our behavior, and then what we will see is our check is cleared. Now, in conjunction with this, what we can do inside our checks is then come to add a little note, okay? The notes are added with a right click inside the North pane, and we can either do client-facing access or technician notes, and we're going to say net path check for enable.com cleared, and I'll put probably a timestamp in here, 6/29-2023, and we'll say this was 9/10. Just so now I know that this action I was taking has a nice little note on it. This way, when I'm off and the new technician comes in or the next technician comes in, they can check notes on this device, they could see the actions that were taken, and they know that they're pertinent and necessary actions if they need to jump into the middle of some type of troubleshooting. Okay, which brings us to our outages tab. So when we see the check fail, okay, we will note that it is going to create an outage. Depending on the behaviors we have inside the RMM with our integrated PSA, it will more than likely open a ticket or select none. Okay, none means that that ticket or that behavior does not kick off the opening of a ticket. Opened, of course, means does, and we can click on the hyperlink inside the PSA ticket section to take a look at actions that we may need. If none is there and I want to open a ticket, I can do so directly through the outage pane. Oh, and of course, it's gonna not work quite well with me. Okay, if the ticket is open, please note I can add notes and times to this. Okay, so if this was a performance monitoring check where I went and did my research, I found there was nothing that was concerning now, but I cleared that check, I can put a time entry in here, okay, based off of the rates I need with a brief summary for the time frames that I need that are pulled from my PSA. I can then put notes in here as I need as well, making it visible to end users or leaving that box unchecked for just my technicians. Keeping my technicians in a single pane of glass allows us to now make them a little bit more efficient, right? Again, focusing on keeping our end users up and running while giving our technicians the tools to complete their work quicker, okay? And with easier communication with our other technicians. Inside the South pane as well, we'll see a couple items where we look at finding troubleshooting as well as actions that need to be taken. We'll start off with patch, but we're going to operate under the assumption that all of us have gone through patching before with an individual device, where the right click of a patch in whatever state it's in, missing, pending, installing, failed installation, installed, uninstalling, or ignored, will allow us to choose an appropriate action. Okay, giving us quick and easy access to handle those finicky Microsoft patches or those critical patches that may need to be installed out of band as quick as possible, or going more granular into our patches that are failing. The Managed Antivirus tab here is going to give us the ability to interact with our threats and our items found in quarantine. Okay, threats are going to give us the ability to add them to exclusions if necessary, but it's also going to be our path to deal with this. Okay, more often than not in Managed Bitdefender, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to see some issues with PST and OST files. Okay, if anything is found to be malicious by Managed Antivirus Bitdefender in a PST or OST file, it's going to show up as a threat, not a quarantined item. This is because we can't take any automated remediation on it. Right? If, say, we find an attachment that looks malicious in an email, okay, and we quarantined, remove that malicious item, the email host is going to look at it as a corrupted email, add it back, then we're going to remove it again, it gets added back, and it's just a vicious cycle. So the threats here are telling our techs at a very granular level where we need to go and perform some troubleshooting. Quarantine, of course, as we would expect. Release, delete, and empty the quarantine as necessary. Now, I wish I had some items in here that I could show you some more specific examples on that, but again, I'm in a private cloud, and Enable told me that I can't put neutered malware on our devices for, well, obvious reasons. So my apologies there. Backup and recovery, we're not really going to sit here too much because our right click's going to be more important for us. Okay, that being said, we can select one of these to look at restoring from an individual session as necessary. Okay, but we're going to be a little bit more focused on the backup manager here. Okay, web protection is going to give us the ability to see and perform actions as we may need based off of day, category, or website and URL traffic. Select an item, take an action as necessary. We can add to whitelist, blacklist, or report on the items on a day-to-day basis based off of the time frame that's chosen here in our top right-hand corner. Okay, quick, easy, and efficient information gathering. All right. Last but not least here, checks and tasks and how do they work together in a more succinct fashion. Okay, and we'll start with tasks. Automated tasks, exactly what they say. Items that we want to run on a schedule, daily, weekly, monthly, manually, or on check failure. And on check failure is being the most important item here. Now, quickly tying back into our wake on land question, there's your automated task. Okay, we're not going to add this to the device that we want to wake up. We are going to add this to the device that we want to send the magic packet. So typically your DC. Okay, and you'll be able to come in, double click or click proceed on this item, enter in a sling of IP addresses. Okay, well, not a sling, not a slew, but the MAC address or of the target item. Okay, and go. If you need help setting up an automated task, click the hyperlink. We'll bring you directly to the user manual. Okay, and you can get quite granular with what tasks we are looking at. So if we come to system automated tasks, we can come down, let's Control F, wake. You'll even note that, where did that go? There we go. All right, what does it do? How does it work? Quick, simple, and nitty gritty. But let's take a slightly different example. We're going to look at cleaning up temp files. Okay. We talk about self-healing a lot, and it's something that folks inside the dashboard tend to hit on, but not as much as I would like. Okay. And this is where we look at technician efficiency. What would we rather have a technician doing? Solving a repetitive or redundant ticket multiple times during the day, time and time again, or automate it? And let's see if we can automate it. Now, I'm even saying I don't want my technicians going run manage task now with a right click. I'm saying that we need to start thinking about the checks we can add to our devices that can perform our maintenance, as well as our basic remediations of our repetitive and redundant tasks time and again. So for instance, deleting all temp files, disk space check. I don't care what drive, to be quite honest. I want this to run whenever my disk space check fails. We can see a nice example of this here in the background. We'll set a maximum permitted execution time, and what we'll see is this. We can see the assigned check for the individual task, and we can now make it so that our dashboard is tier 1/2. Okay. The engineer team that you have, your tier 3 technicians, may be the ones that are best at creating the automation, but your tier 1 and tier 2 techs are the ones that deal with the most annoying stuff inside your business, and they're the ones that deal with the most repetitive tasks. If we can have them target our tier 3 and our tier 2, our engineering team to create more scripts, the better our life is. If your tier 1 technician ends up doing this themselves, great. They should be promoted. Okay. Editing any tasks or checks can be handled with a double click on that individual item. And in the event of checks, if we double click, you'll also note that you see a multiple devices section. Or if you right click, you'll see edit checks like this. And this will allow us to look at creating global thresholds as well as updating checks in a large volume. Okay. As we may need. So for instance, one of your technicians discovers that your disk-based checks don't have a solid standardized threshold, right? Let's go in and look at adding one. I recommend 15% because of EDR. All right. The left-hand column we went over pretty well, but we're going to take a look at what we can see here just a smidge more granularly, and then we're going to jump into our additional troubleshooting tools. So dashboards here is quite a nice item, okay? The overview I tend to stay away from just because it's a good view, but this tends to be an admin view in my mind. As a technician, I'm not quite going to sit here too much, right? I don't need this holistic view of the dashboard. Okay, if I'm doing a QBR, or if I'm coming in here as my tech administrator or director or my operations administrator, I'll look at this dashboard. But as a technician, where I'm going to sit is going to be first off monitored devices, right? Where I can sort by device name, site name, and the like, select a device, get pertinent information off of that quite quickly. Okay, filter by client and filters as needed. Right? And we will note we're still in beta here, but just some nice information gathering, right? What are my longest last responses? Okay, who do I need to be looking at because they may need to be removed or issues? And then the active issues section. Okay, we saw the wall chart, and we'll see a difference here between this and the wall chart. If you remember, the wall chart had two problems on it, the net path check and the disk space check that had failed. Here, you'll note I see the disk space check and the net path check that I cleared in this demo, but I also see my cleared checks here as well. Okay. So active issues giving us a little bit more detail, but maybe not directing quite our this needs to happen now work, right? Pick and choose your poison when we're looking at these items. We talked about asset tracking, okay, mainly for reporting functions. Okay, suffice to say that there is a lot in here. Couple items that we're going to see for our technicians that are going to be best in here outside of the reporting itself is going to be our custom fields, right? Is this a DC, yes or no? You know, applications that may be installed needed as a glance, right? Just anything that we need above and beyond the basics of a device here inside the summary tab as quick as possible can be quickly and easily added for information gathering. And then software licenses. Software license groups can be set up so they can track the number of licenses, not the keys, but the number of licenses that are being used. So if I have a client that has 100 devices that all have Word on them, I can track to see if there's, say, 99 instances of Word installed and there should be 100, or I can see if there's 101 instances who's doing something that's a little bit pirated. Inside EDR, we talked about some of our troubleshooting, but what we didn't talk about for technicians is ease of use of our analyze section. This comes into our tier 3 and our tier 2 technicians. Let's sort our time frame a little bit better. See if I have something over the past couple years. Sorry, I don't think I've forced a failure in here in quite some time. So let's go to here and we'll apply. And of course, it's not going to let me. Boo. All right, let's do this real quick. Get to one we know of. All right, so inside the EDR analyze section, whether we're in the standalone or we are in the integrated versions, we're going to see pretty much the same thing. And I know I got the eCar test file on a couple devices in here more recently. So let's go and take a look at them. So when we find threats inside our EDR system, be it the analyze section, right, or the incident section in standalone, analyze being integrated, we have quick and easy ability to, one, directly from the dashboard, take threat actions, as well as change verdicts and statuses on these items. And then directly from the individual threat itself, we have the ability to quickly and easily take actions, as well as disconnecting devices from the network, okay, allowing it to talk to pretty much EDR only. Okay, and then we have our base information gathering items. Now, something that tends to be forgotten about inside EDR quite often, both integrated and standalone, is the ability to click your SHA value and then open in virus total. Recorded futures of paid community to join. Deep visibility is an additional bit of SentinelOne. If you're paying for it, great. If you're not, that's okay too. Virus Total is a free service that's going to provide us additional information on the threat that we found based off its SHA. So here we can see this is the eCard test file, who it's been found by, who recognizes it, any basic details on that particular item, any relations we may need to see, behavior items, and then community information as well, right? Who posted what, who's used this for what, maybe there's some nice cleanup items that may be needed, okay? Just a nice place to sit to learn more about what we're dealing with. So additional information gathering as well as additional tool sets. Okay, quick, easy, and effective. All right, last but not least, we've got backup manager and some reporting items that we'll see. Okay, that we'll quickly take a look at, and then we will look at closing out today's boot camp. All right, so first up, the backup manager. So we talked about the backup manager being an item that we can use for just restores. We didn't quite talk about that for troubleshooting. And we'll quickly take a look at that. So when the backup manager loads, there's a couple pieces of information we're going to see before the tool even loads itself, as long as we're remotely connecting to it. And it's going to be this nice little line right here. Right, for me, you're going to see US-CH-0204-02. Okay, what this is telling me is that my information for this particular device is being stored in the US, in Chicago. Okay, it also tells me server and rack information, but let's be honest, we don't quite need that. What we much more prefer to see is location. Here's a quick and easy way to see it. Troubleshooting wise, we have the ability to select an individual day. And when we see our error number here, we'll see a hyperlink associated with this, as well as some error denotations with this. Each of the error denotations, more often than not, I should say, not each, but most of them, also have an associated KB article inside our Success Center. If you take that error number, right, go and search what's going on. Your technicians will get quicker and easier times figuring out what went wrong where and where to target, rather than going in and looking at just hunting and pecking as they go through their day-to-day remediation of backup check errors. Okay, underneath the preferences section, okay, we have a couple of items that you may want to note. So if we look at our individual schedules, okay, we have the ability for pre and post backup items to be selected. Pre and post backup items are going to be automation, and we're going to see this more heavily used inside the standalone tool. Okay, so automation that needs to take place before the backups happen. Again, additional, not so much troubleshooting, but proactive maintenance as we're moving through. Last but not least, we're going to take a look at 4 quick reports that are going to help us troubleshoot. Weirdly enough, we're going to start with the user audit. This isn't an admin-only report. I love this for troubleshooting, especially when we see something that may have been done to a device that looks to be a little bit wonky and it was done out of the dashboard. Okay, while our technicians may not be using this for some type of admin report, they can use it for a, hey, technician John, what did you do? Right? Engineer Jane, why did you do this? It broke this, and what should I be looking for? Right? So it gives us a nice little historical guide. Okay, again, making it easier to pull information, easier to look at pulling items out of this. Next up, we'll have our failure reports, right? Check clearing, critical event, and fault history reports. What broke when in a more historical and customizable view than just the outages tab, because that can get pretty hefty. The device inventory report that's going to show you what's deployed where and what policies are applied. Okay. And then our patch report. The patch report primarily being one of the biggest here for efficiency. Coming into the overview report, your technicians can, by client, please don't do this for everybody, look at pulling either by patch, device, or status. I'll go by patch. What status we need. So we'll take out installed here. Okay, and when we generate our report, we can look at targeting our items. So here we see our patch update. We see a list of who it's pending on. Okay, we'll see a list of missing by device as we need, and we'll see all of our proper denotations. Quick and easy targeting of where we need to be pushing our efforts. Outside of that, folks, it's been a pleasure. I am sorry for going about 3 minutes beyond our scheduled time. If you need anything else, please let me know. You can always reach me at joseph.ferla, that's F-E-R-L-A, @enable.com. Hope you folks have a good day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.